So hello from isolation and home offices.
Yes, happy quarantine.
Happy quarantine 2020.
So we thought it might be a good idea to have a discussion to put together some ideas around how people can be improving their virtual meetings now that everybody's hosting their communications online as opposed to in person. I know I've been having a number of different phone calls and conversations with clients and people, especially over LinkedIn, that are looking at how they can increase the quality of what they're doing, because this has all been thrust upon us very quickly, so none of us are prepared. And so just wanted to give people a rundown of some simple things that they can do, some different equipment they can pick up, some different environmental changes they can make, and other technical things they can explore to increase the overall quality of either their virtual meetings or their virtual events they're hosting. So what were your thoughts? You had put together a list of a couple things to run down.
Yeah, I'd say let's start just by dealing with an overview. In my mind, there's sort of 4 different categories that are encompass everything that you could possibly do to increase your quality. The first is what people are going to gravitate towards. It's equipment. It's the most obvious. It's impulse spending sometimes, and people love doing it. But equipment. But just as importantly, I'd say the next 3 are locations. We'll get into that, but choosing an appropriate location for lighting and for sound, making sure your internet can actually handle a high quality signal going up and down, and the ways you can mitigate a slower signal. And then the last is simply how to be a good guest or host. That comes down to how you present yourself, how you handle your equipment, the different techniques you can put into place.
Excellent.
So, do you want to deal with the candy first, or do you want to leave that for last?
Yeah, so let's get into the equipment. That's probably the most, or that's probably the number one thing people are wondering about, is what tools they can start using. So obviously the setup that we have is probably not what the average person will be using. They didn't.
Yeah, I got one light here and one light here, and
so
I got another one over here.
I've got a $3,000 camera with another $2,000 in lighting set up just to turn that into a webcam. And they didn't see us spending about an hour troubleshooting, and I had to update my drivers and so we've just gone above and beyond to make the image quality of our webcams the best it possibly could be. So if you don't want to spend $3,000 to $5,000 on your webcam setup, there are some more affordable things that you can do. For example, usually when I'm not doing an advanced setup like this, I'm using a Logitech webcam, which has quite a good quality. And the one I'm actually using is a number of years old, but it still has a great image. I'll show it here, the Logitech C930E, but there's a couple models newer than that. So you can get a very good quality webcam. The Logitech webcams have been great for a while, for $100 and up. One of the things I like about that webcam specifically is that the microphone in it is quite usable, quite good. I've had issues with using different microphones in the past, and so because that one's already built into the webcam, it's really easy for me just to flip back and default to that. And I find it's actually the most reliable way to go long term in case I have any other issues.
I am never a fan of the built-in webcams on laptops I guess. I find their quality goes anywhere from decent to completely questionable. So anytime you can put an external webcam on there, they're hyper engineered for giving you a decent webcam experience. And sometimes, if you don't got an external one, your cell phone is wonderful image quality these days, as long as it has a strong Wi-Fi connection to be able to handle the bandwidth.
Yeah.
Then that's sometimes the best camera you got on you.
That's a great point, because we just picked up a couple MSI computers that were around $2,500, and they both have built-in webcams, and they're terrible.
They're terrible.
They're like 720 and look super grainy. And
yeah, and I got a little Chromebook over here that I got last week, and I tried it out, and everything's fuzzy. Everything. Like the quality is just horrendous.
Yeah, and that said, you just pick up virtually any smartphone these days, and it's going to have a built-in camera that's infinitely better.
way better. And sometimes the interfaces on those cell phone devices are actually easier to navigate for putting meetings together than the desktop counterparts.
One important thing we might want to mention just while we're on the subject of using your phone as a webcam, which just to make it clear, there isn't a way to really set it up your phone as a webcam. You could call into a meeting from your phone, but you will obviously you need to be on Wi-Fi to do that. But when you're doing so, make sure that you're using your phone horizontally and not vertically. I mean, you can, it'll work, but really all that happens is it just crops the side of the frame. Now, it's a lot easier to hold it this way. It's a lot more comfortable, so it can work. However, if your goal is to increase the overall quality, having it this way will definitely do that.
Yeah, and I think I'll get into this more when we talk about technique, but I have it around here somewhere. For instance, if you're using a cell phone, nothing is more distracting than doing this the whole time for everyone else who has to be on the call with you. You're moving your camera around, you're creating distraction. I have a little mini tripod with a cell phone holder on it, just to lock that down and make sure no one gets nausea from watching your video feed. But
right.
We'll get more into
That's
that one a little bit later.
So I guess we can jump into audio then.
So you definitely want to get a condenser microphone, professional microphone, and a mixer with USB interfaces to your computer, and that will give you the best audio you can possibly have.
It certainly will. It'll cost you like $400, but it'll sound great. That said, the microphone that I'm using probably has a relatively similar output than the setup that you have. It's just not as versatile. Now I'm using the Blue Yeti mic, which is about $150 to $200, I think, these days. And that's a pretty standard microphone. The benefit of it is it just plugs in right over USB. You don't need an additional mixer and phantom power and all that stuff. You can just plug it right into your laptop and it's essentially working. The alternative to that is another microphone from the Blue company, which is the Snowball mic, and this one's around $50, and this also has a great audio quality. It's not quite the level of the Yeti mic, but I've seen lots of professional YouTubers using this as their main audio source. You just get it close enough, and again, it plugs in over USB, and it sounds fine. And for $50, you can't really go wrong.
No, and we were talking earlier about this Samsung Q2U as well as another alternative. It's more of a stage speaker style microphone versus a cardioid dynamic microphone or a condenser microphone. And the cool thing about that is you can plug it in over USB to your computer. It's got a headphone jack, so if you're recording something and you need to isolate your audio, you can use it as a microphone, and you can use it as a preamp to go back to your headphones. And then should you need to take it on stage for any event, then it also has a professional balanced XLR 3-pin output that you can use for the location AV team on top of all that.
Right. So that's cool. So if you're investing into a microphone, if you're only going to be doing a few of these virtual meetings, it's not something you're doing a lot of, but you do a lot more in the live setting, then that might be a better investment because you're actually able to use it for both.
Exactly. It'll be a little bit less sensitive, but it will do a fabulous job.
And I guess price-wise, it's actually right in the middle of these two microphones. It's around $100.
Yeah, I'm on Amazon.ca here, and it's $125.
Yeah, 100 US anyways.
Like yeah.
And I guess the alternative to that would be to using the built-in microphone on the webcam. So if you're not going to have an external one, you don't want to have the additional setup, or just don't want to invest extra money, the built-in one on the webcam will suffice. Obviously, it won't be the same level of quality, but I'm not sure I mentioned, when it comes to the technology, there is a diminishing return on investment. So as long as people can hear you and see you clearly, the message that you're sharing will be absorbed just as effectively. You don't need to set up a 4K camera and have a super expensive lighting setup just to speak to people.
Yeah. Well, and I would actually transition this a little bit into the philosophy of this instead of just the technology, because we can throw model numbers, and those model numbers are going to change over the years and whatnot. Really what you're looking to do with your audio and your video, but to speak to the audio right now, is the whole reason I'm using this microphone and you're using yours is simply because it captures a field that's not very large. It's maybe a foot from my microphone. As I back up, it gets quieter. And the whole point is it isolates my voice from, say, the fan that I have keeping me cool here, or the people next door or whatnot. And that's really what's important. And any microphone that's going to do that, it can be $20, it can be $1,500 in some cases. It doesn't matter as long as it's isolating you from your environment.
That's a really good point. I guess we can talk about that when we talk about location too.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've got traffic going by and all kinds of environmental noise, then a more expensive microphone, that's really where you're going to see it outperform something that's cheaper.
Yeah, like right now I've got double pane glass and I've got loud neighbors, which is most of the reason why I'm using this microphone, because I can simply turn my microphone away from the window and cancel them out a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I would say on top of the condenser microphones, the dynamic microphones, the webcam microphones, or what have you, using a lav mic, you can get anywhere from our quite expensive kits that we use for on-location audio, but you can also get them extremely cheap off of Amazon or eBay or wherever. There's quite a range, and they all do basically the same job. Is you can get like these little lav mics, you just clip them right to your collar or underneath your shirt or something like that, sometimes on the surface of your shirt. And like our professional ones, they plug into the cameras and give beautiful audio. But I've got like a little $25 one that it's got a 3-pin on the headphone jack, so it can plug into your phone, and you can isolate your audio, and it just comes from this near field around your head. And it's all for like $20, so big deal, right?
No, that's a great point as well. If budget is really a top priority and you've already have a webcam, and you just need to add a microphone, then something like that could be a really simple way to go about getting something that will give you that environmental control that's not going to pick up the noisy neighbors and the traffic going by.
Yeah. And a lot of them, like the one I got, it came with an adapter, so I can interface it with a camera and a laptop nicely, or I can interface it with a cell phone. They've got slightly different connectors, so it came with a little adapter to go between them, depending on what I decide to use it for.
So would that just plug into the microphone input on your computer?
Yeah, you can, it comes ready for your cell phone, so then you use the adapter and it mixes it down into something your computer can read in the little headphone jack sized hole, which actually is not for everyone's computer, because like my Chromebook has one jack that does microphone and headphones,
right?
so I wouldn't want to use that little adapter. So it depends, you have to look around a little bit.
Yeah,
and
if you've got a Mac, you definitely don't have that because everything's on a dongle. So
oh yeah, I actually I haven't used Mac in I don't know how long.
Yeah,
it's been a darn long time.
Understandably.
So you know more about the Mac side.
We'll leave that for another video. All right, so we can jump into headphones now.
Headphones.
And
yeah,
so
you see, I'm wearing mine.
Yeah, well, we're both wearing headphones, and they don't need to be super fancy.
No.
But there is a very important reason why you need to wear headphones whenever you're doing any type of video calling or like Zoom meetings.
Yeah, which people might not realize, because you think about Skype way back in the day, and the technology since then, the noise cancellation that they've been implementing is so dang good compared to what it used to be. Like, I can open up House Party, Zoom, Skype, whatever on my phone and experience very little echo, because they cancel out that noise. But that said, it will always be worse than if you just eliminated that noise by wearing headphones anyways.
Yeah, one of the challenges that can come up, and I've seen it specifically in Zoom meetings, is just getting feedback, right?
Okay.
Where through the speakers, it's picking up the other people on the call. And so we had this one on a live stream, and we had about 5,000 people watching, and then the guest is being picked up, and it's relatively subtle, but it's enough that I had to suggest that the organizer put on some headphones, because we could basically hear them when they're speaking into their microphone, and then again hear them through the presenter's computer through the speakers on the presenter's computer. So that's one reason.
So did you guys have feedback on that too?
Yeah, I mean, it was relatively delayed. You would just hear it, it's like a millisecond, but it makes a difference. When the goal is to increase the the quality of your overall talk, it's something that's very, very simple, and it makes a big difference to the listeners, especially if you end up having a longer delay than that. Then you get doubling, and then you could end up with actual feedback loops and stuff happening if your speakers are loud enough.
And that's actually quite painful. I experienced that recently with my setup when I was getting it put together. Is I forgot one of my dials on, so my microphone was picking up my actual speakers, and everyone was walking away with essentially bleeding ears after that, just because it's just such a high piercing note that gets through there.
Excellent. Yeah.
So
if you can avoid
definitely
that,
don't want that.
It's highly recommended.
If it's okay to move on, I'd like to talk about the mobile devices a little bit here, because for us, we're both using our desktop computers with specialized equipment and everything, but for a lot of people, the cell phone is the best you got. Whether it's the camera or the audio quality or just the most available device. Like, if you're not a person who has a big old good computer and you just have a little Chromebook going around, you're better off using your cell phone oftentimes. But the thing that always seems to happen with people streaming in from their phones is movement. They're always holding their phone or adjusting their phone. All my family does this. Is I try and stabilize my phone when I'm talking to my family over the internet, but they'll be holding it and going like this all over the place. And after a while, your viewers just get nauseous. There's no two ways about it.
Well, you know what? On that thread too, if you're holding your phone and you're using the microphone from your phone, it's very easy to accidentally cover the microphone, and then people can't hear you at all.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. That's true.
Because usually the microphone is on the bottom here somewhere. So if you're holding it like this, now you're going to sound muffled.
Good luck. Yeah. So what I like doing, and I don't have it directly where I'm sitting right now, but I have a tripod. Like you can get a professional one. You can also get a cheapy $20 one from London Drugs or something. And then you get a little cell phone adapter. And if you're not leaving home because of isolation, or you don't want to spend that amount, just finding books or anything you can prop it up against your cell phone and just plant it there and never touch it.
Yeah.
Unless something goes wrong and you have to troubleshoot it, just never touch it.
Perfect. Well, that's a great point. So I think from there we can jump into location.
Yeah. Arguably one of the most important things in making this work at all. Like, for instance, like I said, I'm in an apartment. I've got a 3-year-old running around all the time. So, and there's a great example. That little truck.
You can hear that? Is that on your end?
I don't know.
Or is that on my end? I think
it's
it was
gone
on my
now.
End, but it was relatively quiet. Yeah, they've started construction on my street like this week.
So yeah, that's one big thing to consider actually, is whether you have loud neighbors and you need to shut the windows or move to a different part of the house, whether you got family who you're all stuck in isolation together. How are you going to isolate your sound and your video from those people that you share your space with, whether it's big trucks or neighbors or family? That's arguably what's going to make or break.
You don't want to end up like the guy on the BBC where his 3-year-old daughter comes strolling in the door, and then the wife tries to subtly pull her out, and you can clearly see it all, and then you end up going viral for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, that was kind of hilarious. Actually, on a funny note, it's interesting to see all the behind the scenes that these news anchors and weathermen are doing, because they're at home. They sent a crew to drop off the gear and set it up, and then the anchors are just hitting record when it's time for them to go live.
Yeah.
So they're remote.
You know what? Actually, I saw a discussion about this with some of our colleagues, other people in our industry around the world, and somebody was making a note that the Oprah Winfrey's team has basically set her up using a MacBook, right?
Oh, I didn't hear
Like
this
even
one.
yeah, you see even some of the late night hosts and stuff. The setups that they're using are essentially the same things that the average person has access to.
Okay.
Um, I now I guess there's some debate whether they are doing that on purpose to make it look like it's more authentic when because they easily could have a higher quality production because they will cut from a MacBook to a broadcast camera shot looking
Uh-huh.
at Oprah and then cut back to the MacBook. I haven't seen the clip. This is what somebody was saying,
Oh,
but yeah,
yeah.
like so again, just sort of reiterating, it's as long as people can see and hear you clearly, it's fine. If it's good enough for Oprah, it's probably good enough for you.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, back to the location thing, For me in this particular room, it I had to choose whether to set up my own lights or to use the window light, simply because, like for instance, in my area, my apartment here, the light changes drastically at this time of day. So that would have been not good for what I wanted to show
Yeah,
on
well,
stream
that's a
here.
good point because I started this using pretty much natural light in here, and then I've since put up more lights because the sun moved. It's still perfectly blue sky outside, but the sun moved, and so it became darker in here. So
Should
whenever
have just
you
done my version and
just
blocked out
block
the
it,
sun
yeah.
setup.
So whenever you rely on natural light, it's going to change. It's going to move. So it may start out being perfect, but over the day, or even very quickly, if a cloud comes out, you may become very dark.
Exactly.
So yeah, the smart thing to do, if you don't do as I say, not as I do, is just don't rely on natural light at all, and shut the blinds. Close them up, and either just rely on the light that you have in the room, or pick up some inexpensive LED lighting
Yeah.
if that's needed.
Well, and even just using household appliances, like if you've got, like, most of my lighting here is actually office IKEA, those little desk lamps that are on suspended arms. I'm just using those with a pair of 100-watt equivalent LEDs
Mm.
for my two of my lights here. The only LED panel is this one that I don't have a spot for. But also this diminishing returns again. It depends on how long are you going to be on air for. If you're going to be on air for five
Yeah,
minutes, or if your camera's not the presenter camera, there's someone else who's main on camera,
yeah.
then it doesn't matter so much. Just choose a nice bright room, a living room with indirect light. Try to stay out of direct light, like the sun
You know what?
hitting
That
you.
reminded me because we were on stream and one of the presenters, he was sitting right in front of the window, which is what you're supposed to do. But we were on
Yeah.
there for over 10 hours, and so at one point, the sun was coming in a beam and just hitting him and just slowly moving across him, and so he was overexposed. His background's totally dark because the camera's automatically adjusting,
Yeah.
right? And he's not paying attention to this. He's engaged with what's going on in the interview, obviously, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean it's fine. It's whatever. But if the goal is to make it as good as it can be, the better thing would have been close those windows so that you don't have that happen in the first place.
100%. Usually the windows are worst. They're our worst nightmare on a lot of these locations. When we go to an event location, they got these giant ceiling high windows, and it's
Yeah,
like,
people
oh,
go, "Oh, it's
can't.
great. It's got these nice big windows. It's gonna look amazing." And we go, "Oh no."
No, no. Just shut the windows and give us some stage lights. That's
Yeah.
all we want.
Well, yeah. So even so, if you don't have a choice, let's just say if people don't have a choice that they're going to be
Sure.
in daylight, let's say they've got a really big fancy apartment and they don't even have blinds set up on their
Yeah.
windows. They got this big open concept. Just
Take
put
a
up
bed
some
sheet.
lights. Yeah, well, you could do that. I would say just put up some lights as well, so that if the light does
Yeah.
change, you at least have a baseline, right? Like you
That
can default back to it's going to be at least this bright, whether or not the room is filled with daylight.
exactly. Like you can even just grab a floor lamp that's nearby, like any floor lamps that are nearby, and stick them on whatever side the sun would be coming in on, and it would accomplish exactly what you're talking
Hmm.
about, where the sun disappears. Well, at least you have that minimum
Yeah.
light.
So like the most important thing to know when dealing with light is just to make sure that it's always in front of you in this in situation because we're dealing with cameras that are automatically adjusting. So if the light is behind you, the camera is going to automatically adjust to the bright behind you, making you nice and dark so that we can see out the window. What you want to do is have the background ideally darker so that the foreground with you is the brightest spot. And so then the camera can automatically adjust for that.
Also on location here, like the lighting, as long as it's in front of you and as long as it's not changing a lot, you can get away with a lot. I did my lighting this way because I like making films.
Right.
It's in my DNA. I can't just do a boring lighting setup. But one thing that so many people I find completely overlook is your background decoration. Like for you might have been setting up for an hour or two with your technology. That took me all of 20 minutes. What took me 4 hours to do was to get that workbench behind me clean.
Right.
So, like I'm always working on this project or that project, and it's always a cluttered mess.
Yeah.
And so I had to find homes for it all. And realistically, we're working at home now, so my bed is right there. So if I used my laptop webcam, it would show my bed and my shelf and my laundry basket, and that would be hugely unprofessional.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't recommend anyone go on stream with that in your background.
I hadn't really thought about it, but the setup that I have is relatively easy to replicate because I just have a blue screen that's 6 or 7 feet high, and then a banner behind me. So if you're a speaker and you have a banner, just find a blank wall and put it against that, and that
100%.
way you don't have a background that's filled with your house.
Yeah, and that's again for looking professional. Like it's one thing if you're just visiting with friends, they can put up with you one way or another, but if you're trying to be professional, you really gotta even look. If you have a bookshelf behind you and it's like, oh, it's a nice little bookshelf, and for me it would be out of focus a little bit, but you really don't want to you really want to look at what's on your bookshelf as well. Like, do you want people to potentially find out, I don't know what people are reading. You've
got every copy of the 50 Shades of Grey series, and they're all earmarked.
And the Twilight, and they're all, annotated and everything, So it's just a general awareness. There's no real guidelines there. It's just a general awareness that make sure your background represents who you want to be on stream and give it some significant thought.
Mm-hmm.
Is more my point.
And that's a great point, and it's actually kind of a challenge. And one of the reasons why I use my professional camera as a webcam as much as I can, because with these smaller ones, they actually make it more difficult to do that because there's such a wide lens, right?
Yeah.
So they see
100%.
everything. So on this camera, I can have it. I've got a 50 on it right now, which has, as you can see, it's a pretty tight shot, right? Where if I switch that to this camera on a 24, you're going to see way, way more of the environment. So that's way more stuff I have to try to hide and polish in the environment to look professional on camera.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, is for the camera that I'm using, the camera that you're using, it's far easier to customize that. Whereas on something like that little webcam or any of the built-in ones, usually the software running those is so rudimentary that good luck changing it. It's not just a matter of, I'll crop in and, just tighten my frame for what I'm showing online only. Most softwares won't let you do that at all.
I used to do that actually, and this gets into more advanced stuff, but I would actually put my webcam into OBS, crop it in, and then use run out of OBS into Zoom or whatever, so I could have a little bit more control, so that basically just to turn a 24 into a 50.
Yeah, and that would be through like the virtual cam plugin and whatnot.
Which doesn't work right now because Zoom has changed all their settings, but anyways.
Well, I think it's part of the security suite that they
Probably,
enabled. Is they don't want a third party in between the source and the actual call.
Yeah, that could be the case. I'm sure people will figure out how to get around it soon enough.
Oh, 100%. I'm just waiting for another plugin to come out.
Yeah. Okay, anything else you want to say about that?
Not too much about location. It's mostly about just isolating your background noise, making sure you don't have dogs and cats and kids and neighbors and whatnot, making sure your lighting stays consistent, and that you're in a good lit spot anyways. And then lastly, just checking into your background and making sure you don't have things that you don't want the world to see as part of it.
Perfect.
Um, yeah, I think once you've dealt with that, then you've got to worry about your internet, I figure. Like,
Sure.
oftentimes these apps are sending a signal, so you need enough uplink for that. For our productions, whenever we're live streaming, I always say a minimum of 5 megabit per second.
Mm-hmm.
But now with these softwares, they're also sending you everyone else's video.
Right.
So if you have, and the way the internet technology works, it's not like, oh, I'm sending 5 megabit up, but I have 30 megabit down. It doesn't allocate like that. It's, if you're using all that 5 megabit up, you don't have that 30 megabit down available. Just it's beyond me. I had someone explain it to me once, but basically it allocates your wire into different portions, and it can only handle a maximum on one of those channels or mix on all of those channels. So if you're sending 5 megabit and you have to receive everyone else's feed, well, then the app is going to downscale your video output or downscale their delivery to you in order to accommodate that.
I guess if that's the case, then switching to data might actually be a higher quality.
Yeah. If you have is it 4G right now? LTE or whatever it is. I've actually done speed tests on my LTE that were faster than some locations we've had to stream from. So we've just hooked up my cell phone as sort of the hotspot and streamed off of my 10 gigs of data.
Well, I remember we had a live stream, and the actual event was outside, so there was we were in a small corner where the internet actually worked.
Yeah.
So actually that's might be an important thing to mention too, is the internet will be different in different parts of your house.
Yes, 100%. I live in an 1,100 square foot apartment here, and so my internet hookup is at the opposite end of this apartment, and my apartment's, I don't know, it was built 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And so I actually had to buy 200 feet of Cat5 internet cable and wire it along the ceiling the whole way over to my office, where I set up a second internet switch to actually have decent internet on this side of the house. So it's going to vary a lot, and depending what house you're in too.
And just in terms of what city you're in, like in Vancouver where they have a lot more fiber installed. If you've got fiber, this is not a problem you're going to have to think about. But as you get further out from there, like in White Rock, for example, they don't have any fiber. So you're going to be on something that's less than that. Now that said, I've got Shaw
You have 300.
I've got Shaw
you?
600.
So
now the thing, it's with Shaw 600, it's a max 30 up and up to 600 down. Now a lot of the time it's not 600, but it does get that. I've seen it up to 700. So I mean it's pretty stable. I'm in a relatively new area here, so the infrastructure is 10 years old, so relatively new. But if you get into older areas, like where I was in White Rock previously, we actually didn't even have cell reception for the first 4 years we lived there. We would actually be on the US network. So if you're having issues with the internet, I guess so a hardwire connection is best, right? If you can actually be plugged right into the box. And if that's not a possibility, you have to be on the Wi-Fi, then you just want to be set up as close to it as possible.
If you are living in your own house, like it's a separate structure, you are probably going to have better connectivity to your own, ignoring what your contract with the company is, the cable company is, in your own house, depending where that router that's sending the wireless signal is, the further away you get from it, the weaker it's going to get. So even though you have 100 megabit down, you might only get 50 at the edges of your house sometimes, simply because the signal's weaker there. But that said, if you live in an apartment like I do, I've got at least 9 neighbors in close proximity to me. So that means that all of our wireless routers are conflicting with each other and trying to supersede everyone else's routers. So all these wireless signals are fighting for the strongest signal. And because of that, my internet quality degrades very fast, very rapidly, simply because it's competing with all these other signals.
Right.
So if you're streaming from a apartment complex or a condominium or something like that, just be aware that you might have problems at the edges of your apartment or at the edges of your range on your router. Actually, one thing I would recommend doing, I use this app or website all the time. It's speedtest.ookla. We can link it
I
or
use
something.
fast.com.
Fast.com?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't used that one.
Same thing.
Okay, but finding a speed test website or app and just running it from the device that you want to stream from at the spot, at the location where you want to be situated when you're streaming, and test it at the time that you're going to be streaming, so time of day. Because, for instance, if there's a hockey game on, the internet slows down. If there's any sort of big event going on the internet will slow down because the carriers can only handle so much max capacity. So,
right.
I would really say take the device to the location and run a speed test on your internet at various points during the day, but especially at the time that you want to be on air, just to get a read on what you're expecting.
Mm-hmm. So if you're going to be having a meeting at 4:00 on a Tuesday, just run a speed test on Monday at 4:00 and just see what you can expect and try different because if you I just do it on my phone. You can do it on your phone, and you go to the different locations in the house. You can see what the different speeds are.
Yeah. And the reason why I say use the device you're planning to use on the stream is so important is, for instance, my cell phone has a better Wi-Fi antenna in it than my Chromebook does. Right. And that has a better antenna in it than my wife's laptop does. And so every device, it depends on the components they use to build your device. So you want to really test that device's connectivity as well as the bandwidth at that time of day.
That's a great point. I wouldn't have thought of that. Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm the tech guy.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So should we jump to a technique and framing here?
Well, actually, I have one more thing,
Sure.
one or two more things about the bandwidth side. Is I game online with some of my friends, and the one guy's wife was actually uploading a video to the internet because she's a YouTuber now, and he kept crashing out of all of our sessions that we were doing because their internet was just so bogged down. So especially when everyone's living at home together,
right?
Like right now when we're doing this, it's not quite so bandwidth heavy for my internet plan. But if it was, I'd go over to my wife and say, hey, can you actually just not even stop uploads and downloads, just turn off the computer entirely? Because sometimes they'll be uploading or downloading something in the background far behind the user interface, more into the technician's interfaces. And you just have no idea. So I would say, as much as you can, shut down every other unnecessary device that could be using internet during the stream itself.
So if that's the case, then if you've got kids at home that are watching Netflix or something, maybe ask them to download what they want to watch onto their device beforehand instead of streaming it live.
That or kick them into the backyard and take away their cell phones.
If that's an option, yeah.
Choice is yours. Or find a reason to ground them and take away their cell phones.
Yeah, so that's a great point, though. Yeah, so if there's multiple people using the same bandwidth, then it's going to decrease how much everybody's getting if everybody's using it at the same time.
Yeah, you only got one pipe in and out. It doesn't matter which device is using it.
I guess maybe something that I'll mention really quickly. I don't want to get into it, but if you've got a larger place, then having Wi-Fi repeaters or boosters can be a good way to go. I know Shaw has, I think it's Shaw Blue Curve. You basically pay $7 a month for each of these things, and they'll set them up throughout your house so that your whole house has internet that's the maximum speed or maximum optimized. Or you can,
and it's their technicians that do it too?
I believe so. Yeah. And it's just a flat monthly fee per device, and or you can buy your own booster, which
Yeah.
there's some technical stuff involved with setting that up. But if you've got a large place or say you've just got multiple floors and your router is on the first floor, but you're not getting much signal on the second floor, then that can be a good way to get around it too.
Okay, and you mentioned Shaw, but I assume that other carriers like TELUS
I don't.
or
I'm Wishaw, so I know that they're carrying that. I haven't seen anything from TELUS to suggest that they are, but
okay,
somebody could look into it and find out pretty quickly.
it's worth calling your provider and checking if they have some
Yeah.
service like that.
And if they don't, then asking them might inspire them to do so.
Yeah, well, even if they don't, I find talking to the technical team, like I use a third party renter internet provider, and calling their tech department and just describing the problem, they will often say, "Oh, here's a shopping list and here's the instructions to make it happen."
Right.
So you can always get support to make your internet signal stronger in your home.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else on that?
No, I think that's everything for bandwidth. I think it's all down to the user now, or PEBCAC, as I'm used to saying.
All right. So technique and framing. I'll let you take the lead on this.
Well, especially coming from more of a short film and industry side of things, I'm a little bit particular about framing as much as I can be. There's nothing worse than looking up someone's nose. Like, if you have your cell phone and you prop it like that, so it's looking up and you're looking down at it, you are giving all of the viewers and attendees the absolute worst view of you possible, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's an important point just overall, is to make sure your nose is clean before you get on stream.
Reminds me of that one job where we had to clean the little fella out of a guy's nose.
Yeah.
And it took me 30 hours in post-production just to do that.
Not
yeah,
recommended.
No. I would say, like, first set up your frame. Well, it doesn't matter first or second, but you want to, first of all, look in the bathroom mirror and just, check for a few little stray fellas there. And for someone like you or I, we have a beard. Now, nothing makes a beard look worse than completely scraggly on screen. So, going and taking time to, if you want, clean it up. Check for food in it. You never know. Check for, remember the one backstage series that we were working on for a client of ours, where the one interviewer, she had a bit of lettuce right on her front tooth the whole time. Just go in and check for those little details. Make sure you are at your best, first and foremost, and then go and find a good spot to prop up, if it's your cell phone, your laptop, your professional camera, what have you. And just find a good frame. Like, I spent half hour this morning was just taking the camera that I'm using here and putting it there and twisting it back and forth and going, no, I don't like that. Put it over here and do the same thing till I was happy with the frame. Because again, especially if you're a presenter, if you're not just an attendee, but you're also a presenter, why wouldn't you do the best that you can?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say cleaning yourself up and then setting your frame should be sort of your first priority. Once you've found the location that's quiet and you found everything else. If you're using, if you have one, use a tripod. 100%.
And
don't
it's
rely
easy
on
to
that
get,
stack of books.
no matter what you're using, if you're using like the webcam on here on the bottom, it's got a little place where you can screw this onto a tripod.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Now
I didn't know it had a thread.
I could just put this on the top of my monitor, right? Which is where I normally keep it. But to do that, I have to actually push down my monitor because it's really tall. But I could have it on a small tripod or something in front of me, it gives me a lot more freedom where I can put it if I actually put that on a tripod.
Yeah, 100%. And it's the most stable mount around. So you stick it there, and like we said earlier, you figure out your frame, you figure out your audio, you figure everything out, plop it down, and just don't touch it. Ever. Like, I keep forgetting that we're in the technique side of things, not the equipment side of things, but just don't touch it. Ever. And then I would say when you're setting it up, try and set it so that it's about the same height as, say, your nose or your chin, sort of here. Because then you're not looking down at yourself with the camera, and you're not looking up your nose either.
Fair enough.
That'd be my first big tip
Yeah.
there.
We know it from experience.
Oh yes, and also for those who are a little bit more vanity driven, you're going to get your best proportions if the center of the lens is about where your mouth and nose are,
Right.
without distorting your features. Like if you're worried
Especially
about
with
having
a
a big
wide
forehead.
lens, yeah.
Exactly. Like the lenses on our cameras are so wide. So if you stick it closer to your forehead's going to appear massive by comparison to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So just, again, it just takes time setting it up and looking and saying, am I happy with my image in that frame? One thing is with technique and microphones, if you're wearing a lav, it's not a big deal. Just put it center and you'll be fine. Oops, sorry. That's a bad technique right there. So don't do that. But for instance, like this microphone, if I twist it sideways, you can't hear me so well anymore. So you have to ensure that whatever device you're using to capture, you have to present to it. As much as you're presenting to the audience, you need to present to the devices capturing you.
Mm-hmm.
So if I needed to be facing the camera directly, I would actually put this microphone stand between me and the lens. So that way I can be perfectly in line with the camera
Right.
and still get good audio.
That's actually one thing that I found out recently, and I was actually doing the same thing with the Blue Yeti mics. There's a tendency, just because of how they're designed, to want to speak into the top of it. You hear if I go up here, I sound quite different. But it's designed to actually listen from the front, not from the top. So I used to actually point it like this.
Yeah.
But now I just have it straight on.
And there's actually, if you're using a microphone that does have what we call them as a cardioid microphone, it means that it captures, like if this is 180 degrees here, it captures a bubble in front of that, but only a tiny bit behind it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's one of the benefits to the Blue Yeti, for example, is on the back here. It's got, you can dial in which one it is. So if you've got multiple people in the same place, you can set it so that it's getting it from everywhere, so that you got more of an interview setup. Right now I got it so it's just coming from the front, so it's not picking up the fan sitting over there. So I guess those are the kind of features you get with the more expensive tech. But that's only if you are going to be doing more advanced stuff.
Exactly. And if you do have that more expensive tech and it's not an omnidirectional microphone, it's actually a cardioid, like a directional microphone. Usually a little tip that I learned while doing audio engineering back in the day is the side of the microphone that has the little emblem telling you what type of microphone you have. Like in my case, it's a cardioid pattern. It will be on the side that it captures from. So you're not going to see the cardioid symbol on the back of the microphone. You'll always see it on the front where it captures audio from.
That's funny.
As you check your microphone.
Yeah, I think this one is actually the other way. And ironically enough, well, because this is the symbol over here, right?
No. But there should be one on the body of the microphone.
Yeah, there isn't.
Oh,
is. I've got on this side. I've got a volume and a mute button. But that said, I for a long time I actually used this backwards as well, because I assumed that I want to have the gain control and stuff, right?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, like I had a little Zoom H2N back in the day. Absolutely fabulous microphone. It could record surround sound 4-channel right down to just a cardioid feed. But the screen was on the opposite side of where you would have to speak into if you're doing a cardioid. So if I'm trying to do a podcast or something, I'm using it, I can't see if it's recording. I can't see if I'm peaking my audio. I can't see anything because the screen's on the opposite side. So I wish, just like your Yeti there or whatever, that they would make it a little bit more sensible. Yeah, I should say.
Yeah.
Another thing to worry about, or not worry about, but to be mindful of, is on all these apps, they will usually give you a little preview of what you look like. Like for our Zoom call here, I can see a full screen version of myself. Don't look at it. Especially if it's in line with the camera. Just don't look at it. Look at the camera. Look at an image of someone just below the camera. We like looking at ourselves. It's psychological. We love looking at our own appearance more than we like looking at anyone else. Yeah, exactly. So the temptation is going to be there. I've been looking at myself this whole time, but I'm looking off camera, so you can't notice so much.
Right.
But as soon as you're supposed to be addressing the camera directly, and you're looking at yourself. There's an automatic disconnect. Like just yeah, I think anyone who's
It's
had
just not as engaging.
yeah, anyone who's had a video call with a relative or something can tell when they're not looking at you, which
Right.
is
Their eyes are
the
wandering.
camera. Yeah. So just be mindful of that. It takes a bit of practice, but always be looking as close to the lens as possible. And then the very last thing I would say about technique is always act as if your camera and microphone are live. Always. Because we do the back end work of some of these meetings and help coordinate the tech. And sometimes there's a glitch and you're live, or sometimes there's a setting that got checked on but never got checked off, or vice versa, or there's an audio follow, we call it, where the audio follows whose video and something went wrong, and you just never know. So if you're presenting in a dress shirt and boxers and then you stand up after your presentation's done,
Right.
everyone's seeing your boxers, and just assume that that's going to happen, because with this technology, it's very new technology. It's being updated every week or two. So any settings, in some of them, they don't carry your settings over to the new version. So it's always be the safest you can.
You know what? And that's, yeah, especially if you're just getting into the stuff, right? And you're not really comfortable how it all works. One of the,
Yeah.
another benefit of the webcam here is it actually has a physical shut on it.
So important.
So I will
important.
actually keep this on when I'm not using it, so that if I ever enter a meeting and I don't want to use my camera, because usually I'll have my other camera set up, and so just in case, because it has happened where it will automatically put it on, just so that doesn't happen, and I'm there going, deer in headlights, it's closed.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me, my father-in-law wrote a poem back in the day. And are you familiar with the story, The Emperor's New Clothes?
Sure. Yeah.
It's a kid's story.
Yeah.
He basically rewrote it for the modern age. This is before video conferencing was even technologically possible.
He wrote The Emperor's New Groove.
No. Troll. But he actually adapted it into, like, for instance, with Zoom, you can replace your entire background automatically. And so he wrote it where essentially people got used to video conferencing from home to do their work. And then some app came out that allowed you to, like in any video game, you could buy outfits or buy clothing, sort of Ready Player One style a little bit.
Right.
And so you could appear on your phone call completely naked
And
eventually. And people got in the habit of being whatever they felt like showing up in, whether it's naked or not. And they just used their virtual clothing. And eventually a hacker got into the system and went, oh, we're just going to disable this right about now.
I feel like that was an episode of the Jetsons, was it?
Oh, really?
I think it was the Jetsons where they would answer their like video phone, and they would have like a phone mask. Like it was like a mask they would wear. It was their own face, but it had all the makeup done and it looked all nice. And then like fell off and they look all disheveled, and we're way off topic now, but
yeah. I was more of a Flintstones kid.
Awesome. Have we covered everything on that?
I think that's a pretty good overview. Like we can definitely go in depth about more of these if we need to, but I think that's pretty good for an overview.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can invite people to leave their questions in whatever location that they're listening to this on. So if it's on YouTube, then they can leave it there. If it's on LinkedIn, then they can leave it there. And we'll do our best to assist. Of course, if you don't want to deal with any of this stuff, we can always assist with running the technology for your meetings and your events, which can be helpful when you're also facilitating everything and you're dealing with speakers and organizing. You don't want to be the one clicking the buttons and all that stuff.
You're already herding the cats. You don't need to be dealing with the tech.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Shao, for jumping on and helping everybody to better understand the tech side of things.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I imagine we're going to be doing this again real soon.
Yeah, I guess so. We got a few topics that we've been asked about, so here's a start.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, people let us know what you liked about this format, if you have any suggestions for improvement, and we'll see you in the next one.